if you have heard of the Arusha Convention and are familiar with it. Okay, so not so many people. So let me just give the background. The Arusha Convention is Africa's regional convention on the recognition of studies, certificates, diplomas, degrees, and other academic qualifications in higher education, underlined. It was introduced on 5th of December 1981 in Arusha, Tanzania, and that's where it got its name. But to date, only 21 countries out of the 54, now here you see 53 because Sudan was then not as is today. So now we can say 54. Out of the 54 countries in Africa, we have 21 that have ratified the Arusha Convention. There are 3 levels of institutional implementation of the Arusha Convention. The first level is the National Higher Education Councils or Commissions, if you have them in your country. The second level is sub-regional bodies supposed to be active in the implementation of the convention. For example, we have SADC, we have CAMES, which is largely for the Francophone area, we have Inter-University Council of East Africa, and so on. So those kinds of regional or sub-regional bodies. Then we have a committee called the Africa Regional Committee, which meets or is supposed to meet every 2 years to review the status of the convention and also to make recommendations. But unfortunately, the last meeting of this Africa Regional Committee was in 2006 in Dakar. And that meeting, again, was supported by UNESCO Breda, and I happened to have been at the AAU at that time, and I was in that meeting. But let me also say here that the Africa Regional Convention, the Arusha Convention, is not the only one. UNESCO globally coordinates a number of regional, and when I say regional, I'm talking about continental conventions for higher education, for the harmonization of degrees and qualifications in higher education. So you have the European, you have the Asian, you have etc., etc. Now, what specifically were intended to be the objectives of the Arusha Convention? First, as the name suggests, to support the comparability and recognition of higher education programs and qualifications, to facilitate the mobility of academic staff and students within Africa, and I would like to add here researchers, administrators, everyone concerned should be able to have some form of mobility, experience sharing, good practices and things like that. The convention was supposed to reinforce solidarity and integration as part of the African Union vision to have an integrated, peaceful and prosperous Africa. This convention, Higher Education Convention, was supposed to facilitate or reinforce that vision of the African Union. It's also, in terms of the global perspective and vision, to contribute to UNESCO's overall efforts to promote international academic mobility. And this is what we are doing here today, promoting international academic mobility. What is the structure of the convention? There is a preamble, and I have a copy here, which again we can send to everybody electronically. We have a preamble, and then we have a page which deals with definitions. So let me take an example of definitions. Distance education maybe, or access. Here we have specific globally recognized definitions, so that like yesterday the UNESCO director, Breda, had to explain what is the difference between training and education. So all the definitions are here, so that we are all speaking the same language. That's what the convention contains. We have also the broad aims of the convention. Then we have the most important part, the obligations of state parties. Because in it, it says we or I, so and so. When you ratify, you sign, you are saying I, the government of Cameroon, I, the government of Ghana, I, the government of Togo, have committed to do A, B, C, D. Then there is the section on implementation. Yes, you've committed to do, but how will you do it? And again, there is some form of agreement as to how we intend to implement. There is the process, the legal process, and many of you may be familiar with what it takes to legally endorse a document. There is the issue of signing the document, ratifying the document coming into force, you adhering to the content of the document or what you have ratified. And then if you want to pull out, there is the renunciation. If Togo, we decide we don't want to be part of the convention anymore, there is a process we have to follow to renounce our commitment. In the question time, I will go a little bit more in detail. There is also provision for an amendment, which is what we have been doing since 2006, and produced this revised version of September 2009. Then there is the witness, but you will see it when you get the soft copy. The countries that have ratified, I said 21. So we provided you in the slide, which I'll send you this presentation, those countries that have ratified. And maybe you can see if your country has ratified or not. Ghana. Ghana, have we ratified? No. No. So those of us from Ghana, we have work to do. Pardon? The Holy See is party to this convention, and I can explain later how this came about. Then we have challenges with respect to the ratification and implementation of the convention. The first one is, as you can see, weak commitment. Our governments, we go everywhere, we say, oh yeah, we will commit, but when it comes to the ratification, the implementation, commitment is not as strong. Part of the reason being that we change too often. Our ministers, I meet a minister for education in a meeting, this meeting, in 6 months' time, the person is gone. And another minister comes, and those of us in program have to keep, doing the work over and over again to sensitize the new minister before he can go to parliament, before he can get us the ratification. I think this is a key issue we have to address. Higher education stakeholders lack awareness. You see why I asked you to show by hand how many people have heard and know about the convention. You saw for yourself, I'm not lying. Then there is no strong link between the African Union's higher education harmonization strategy, which we are also working on very hard in Addis Ababa, and all these other efforts. That's also a key issue. The degree of transparency and credibility of state parties, criteria and procedures of evaluation and recognition within our own countries. There is not always transparency as to how we recognize and evaluate, higher education delivery. It's also a big issue. Or it's there, but it's not robust enough for us to be able to work together continentally. Another challenge is that updating of the convention has lagged behind the developments in higher education continentally and globally. But that we have fixed. We have fixed by coming up with this revised document in as at September, what's the date here? September 2009. There has been a revised version. But again, there's another challenge I'll tell you about. Integrating and harmonizing linguistic specificities, peculiarities, differences, and needs. But fortunately, the LMD process, many of you are aware of the LMD process. My colleague from Cameroon in the last presentation was very detailed what the LMD is intended to do. Simply put, the LMD is supposed to allow Francophone and Anglophone higher education systems to talk to each other. That's the way I always describe it. Now, with the LMD, we have first degree, master's degree, PhD. So our systems should be able to talk together or talk to each other. Of course, with the exception of the linguistic barrier, which even should not be a problem. If only we will have a policy, to have a language policy. When I was studying from, preschool, primary school in Ghana, French was compulsory. Am I right? Today, I'm not sure how many countries have this policy. So I speak French today thanks to that language policy. I remember my minister once saying that even the sea is speaking French. Burkina Faso is French, Togo is French, Cote d'Ivoire, we are hemmed in by French, including even the fish in the sea. So that encouraged us to learn French when I was going through school in Ghana. And I would encourage all of us.